Good afternoon, and I'm happy to welcome you, the Secretary of Commerce, Penny Priska, and your whole delegation to Rwanda. And though here in Rwanda we are not just Rwandans, we are with our other East African colleagues, mainly business leaders. So I welcome you on the backdrop of the relationship we have had for a long time. We want to strengthen between the United States and Rwanda, and even more importantly, between the United States and the East African community and the wider sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm happy to have you, and we are trying to have business leaders get together and work with national leaders in our region. And I think as the background of the relationship also we defined when we had the US-Africa Summit about 2 years ago, 2014 in August. In the US. I'm glad that this is one of those efforts to follow up on the commitments that were made when the two sides met to each other. So I'm sure the rest we shall probably hear from the other leaders that are here present, and mine is an easier and probably preferred responsibility of sitting back and listening. And if I am required to make any contribution, I'd be happy to do that. But I think Madam Secretary and Minister of Commerce, Kanimba, and the leaders here will really do the heavy lifting of the job we have to do today. So I wanted to thank you and welcome you once again.
Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Rwanda, Excellency, U.S. Secretary of Commerce, honorable ministers here around, senior government officials from both governments, Rwanda and U.S., members of the business community from U.S., Rwanda, and the East Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I take great delight and pleasure for the opportunity which is given to me to make a few remarks about the dynamic relationship between the United States of America and Rwanda. Our bilateral cooperation in trade and investment looks to be very healthy. Indeed, the current visit to Rwanda by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce and the very sizable delegation accompanying her demonstrates the strong existing both our country share and the will to keep on strengthening it. Your Excellency, the President, Excellency Secretary of Commerce, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Over recent years, we have seen trade between our countries increasing, which has been driven by a substantial trade preference offered by the U.S. government to developing countries through the Generalized System of Preference and the African Growth Opportunity Act. Our largest export to the US market being our high-quality coffee, which on average generates around $80 million in export revenue, but also other products such as different minerals and different other agricultural products like pyrethrum and tea. More recently, we've seen entrepreneurial and artistic talent of Rwandans break into the US fashion industry through the export of handicrafts and fashionable apparel. As one may expect, the trade relationship is not one-sided. Rwanda imports a wide range of products from the US, which in 2015 amounted to $49 million. These numbers seem to be very low by today's standards, but the dynamic trends are promising for the future. The US investment in Rwanda has also grown substantially, particularly in the last 4 years following the signature of the bilateral investment treaty between Rwanda and the US in December 2011. The establishment of this legal framework has created confidence for US investors interested in Rwanda's domestic market, but also our access to the wider East African community regional market. Being one of only 9 African countries to have established this investment framework with the US, Rwanda is in a very privileged position. Between 2005 and May 2014, we've registered 34 US investments in Rwanda with an approximate value of $300 million, creating more than 4,000 jobs. In the last year, 2015, only, US foreign direct investment to Rwanda made up 25% of total FDI registered in Rwanda, reaching an amount of $220 million, an increase of 21% from 2014. This figure includes investment in quite a broad range of projects, including social investment like Rwanda University of Global Health, a world-class health science university to be developed and owned by Partners in Health, the establishment of a few key agro-processing factories in Rwanda, including the cooking oil factory, Mount Meru Soiko, and the ongoing investment to establish a first-class baby food factory in the region. Through the support of a number of institutions from the US, like the Clinton Foundation, Bill and the Melinda Gates Foundation, and others. Projects in the energy sector include Centennial Power, which has invested $23 million to develop on-site solar system for commercial and industrial entities in Rwanda. And the investment by Symbion Power Lake Kivu intended to extract methane gas from the lake, generating 50 megawatts of electricity, a project worth $200 million US. And to top this growing record of the largest investment commitment to date being the one by philanthropist Howard Buffett Foundation, which promised to invest $500 million in the agriculture sector in Rwanda, and this program is already ongoing. Your Excellency, the President, Excellency, U.S. Secretary of Commerce, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Will this activity have occurred in the recent past? The signs for the future are highly promising. From a trade perspective, the recently extended Africa Growth Opportunity Act has provided an effective mechanism through which African exporters can access the vast US market quota-free and duty-free. Crucially, the commitment given to support Rwanda and the other African countries to develop market entry strategies for AGOA has been very much appreciated. This framework will not only have a positive effect on our trade and the business environment, but also a strong impact on the achievement of our medium-term objective to graduate this country from a least developed country status to a middle-income status by the year 2020. The African people are very grateful for the efforts and persistence of the Obama administration in ensuring that this AGOA renewal was passed through the US Congress last year. In line with boosting US-Africa trade and investment aspirations, the establishment of the East African Trade and Investment Hub in Nairobi has been a significant boost to our regional relationship with the US, the first of its kind and located in the East African region. Member states are continuing to benefit from the support and assistance that it offers. The hub is actively pursuing the creation of a decisive foundation for the negotiation of a first regional trade and investment treaty to be negotiated between the US and the East African community. The new trade and investment partnership under negotiations comprise the following: a regional investment treaty, a trade facilitation agreement, continued trade capacity building assistance, and commercial dialogue between the East African community and the US private sectors. We are particularly encouraged by the conclusion of an agreement on trade facilitation, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and technical barriers to trade, whose implementation will expand US regional trade programs, spur private investment, and scale up business-to-business and association-to-associations partnerships. Whereas there are preparations still required to achieve a more robust and transformative commercial engagement between the East Africa and the US on a regional trade and investment treaty, Rwanda stands by the initiative and will support all efforts to conclude the discussion as soon as possible. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic, Excellency, US Secretary of Commerce, ladies and gentlemen, as stated previously, our biggest export product to the US market is coffee, but different mineral products also constitute a critical export base, which can potentially generate significant export revenue for Rwanda. We have significant minerals to export, but we also understand and appreciate the genuine objective at the origin of the provisions on conflict minerals of the Dodd-Frank Act, which are meant to break the link between conflict and minerals. In that regard, our country, Rwanda, has implemented a robust mineral traceability and certification system, and as a result, 100% of Rwandan minerals are conflict-free and traceable from the mine site to the export point and comply with due diligence regulation of the OECD. Despite these efforts of investing in due diligence, we have noted continued negative international market bias against Rwandan minerals. These regulations have caused a de facto boycott by companies in the US and much in Europe on our most valuable resources. These regulations have clearly had a significant negative impact on the growth of our mining industry. Based on the solid foundation of our mutual cooperation, our country would greatly appreciate your support, Excellency, the US Secretary of Commerce, in ensuring that our mineral exports, which fully comply with the international traceability standards, can flourish despite the Dodd-Frank Act. Moving forward, we will welcome discussions about ways that we could partner with US industry and the US government to identify future growth strategies in this sector and improve implementation of Dodd-Frank Act. This will ensure that we create an environment that encourages public-private partnership, US Rwandan companies that will bring about development of mineral supply chain, increase end user consumer confidence in our mineral products, improve our economy, and get the most of our existing infrastructure. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, looking to the future, Rwanda stands poised to continue to work together with the US government and the other authorities to further increase US foreign direct investment to Rwanda, as well as to the East African Community region. We are particularly interested in collaborating in programs that increase the competitiveness of our exporters and export value chain to take advantage of the market access opportunity offered by the renewal of AGOA. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, honorable ministers, and our guests and my colleagues, as well as our President's Advisory Committee. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to join all of you for this roundtable focused on regional integration. I know that a number of you have traveled a long distance to join us, and we appreciate that very much. On a personal note, I must add I'm delighted to be back in Rwanda. I visited, I think, 5 years ago and found the country and the Rwandan people to be quite remarkable. And of course, Rwanda is one of the truly great economic success stories of sub-Saharan Africa, which is part of why the President's Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa selected Rwanda as its second stop on this mission. The President's Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa, or the PAC-DBIA as we call it, is tasked with providing President Obama and me with recommendations on how to deepen the commercial relationship between the United States and across the continent and countries of Africa. More specifically, we're focused on steps the U.S. government can take to support the establishment of stronger and lasting commercial partnerships between the United States and the African private sectors. And part of that work involves learning about countries and regions where there have been considerable economic success. And Rwanda and the East African community are prime examples of this. Let's consider Rwanda for a moment. On the macro side, from 2000 to 2012, Rwanda's economy grew at an impressive 8.1% per year. Growth in 2015 was expected to be around 7%, and inflation remains below 5%. These numbers are impressive. But from a commercial perspective, Rwanda's rapid climb up the World Bank's ease of doing business rankings is particularly notable. Less than a decade ago, Rwanda was ranked 143rd in the world in terms of ease of doing business. Today, they are ranked 62 out of 189 economies, which is the second best on the continent. Let me just repeat that. 62 in ease of doing business and number 2 on the continent. In fact, after my last visit to Rwanda, I was so impressed with the one-stop shop for investors, both local and foreign, that I went home to the mayor of my hometown in Chicago and suggested we needed to do the same thing as well. There are few things as important as sustaining economic growth than encouraging private sector expansion and reducing the reliance on public sector GDP. And Rwanda has made great strides in this area over the years by making it easier for businesses to form And the government has cut red tape for construction permits, making it easier to get power, and strengthened the legal rights of borrowers and lenders. But Rwanda's economic story and its future cannot be told without reference to the larger story of the East African community, which is what brings all of us here today. It's difficult to overstate the tremendous economic potential of East Africa, and it's worth noting that it is the most integrated and fastest growing regional economic community on the continent. For example, 50% of Rwanda's exports and more than 25% of its imports are to and from fellow East African community members. But this is just scratching the surface of what is possible if governments across the region continue to invest the time and energy and political capital in support of deeper economic integration. East Africans recognize this, which is why in November 2013, EAC member states Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda concluded an agreement charting a path forward for the third foundational pillar of the EAC, a monetary union. Over the course of the next decade, the goal is to establish a common EAC currency to complement EAC Customs Union, which aims to eliminate non-tariff barriers, impose uniform customs duties, and establish a common external tariff on goods exported into the EAC and the EAC Common Market, which aims to liberalize the movement of capital, labor, and goods across member states. The United States supports these goals and is committed to continuing to play a constructive role in the region. In fact, just last year, the Commerce Department chaired the first U.S. EAC commercial dialogue in Washington. The commercial dialogue is wholly focused on enhancing cooperation between our governments, reducing barriers to trade, and taking steps to unlock the potential of the private sector in East Africa. More specifically, the dialogue has developed work streams that are focused on issues like trade facilitation, cold chain development, digital trade, and electronic payments. We also want to explore adding a pillar focused on opportunities and challenges in developing regional infrastructure. Our team is working with the EAC Secretariat to schedule the next high-level commercial dialogue meeting this spring or summer in East Africa, or potentially on the margins of the U.S.-Africa Business Forum, which will be this fall in New York, on the margins of the UN General Assembly. President Kagame, I know you are a strong believer in and supporter of regional integration across East Africa, and your country has staked its economic future on the East African Community and the Central and Northern Corridor initiatives. But this emphasis and focus on regionalization is not new. For decades now, governments across Africa have recognized the benefits of regional integration, from building economies of scale to global value chain integration to achieving greater global competitiveness. But the recognition has not always translated into political will and action. East Africa has seen more progress than other regions, but significant challenges remain and are well known. Lack of adequate infrastructure, including access to power, inadequate funding, lack of political will by some, and overlapping membership in regional economic communities, among other impediments. And that's precisely why it's important that we convene this group of business leaders today. This roundtable is intended to give some of our private sector leaders an opportunity to share their perspective on what the governments of the region, in partnership with the United States, can do to foster deeper regional economic and trade ties. We want to hear your perspectives on how the work of the customs union and common market can be accelerated and deepened, and how governments can remove barriers that inhibit companies from doing more business across East Africa's borders and beyond. We want to learn from you, and you can serve as a guide to other regional economic communities across Africa that are following in the EAC's footsteps. And importantly, we do not want our engagement with each other to end today. In fact, part of our goal, and the President and I discussed this earlier in bringing this group together, is to start a more private sector-led discussion to continue the energy behind regional integration. Whether formally or informally, it's important that we continue this work. And we'd like to use next September's U.S.-Africa Business Forum as a platform to showcase the innovative and practical policy suggestions that our private sectors generate together. So it's my pleasure to be here today, and now to turn the meeting over to Dominic Barton, Global Managing Director of McKinsey, and John Mirenge, CEO of Rwanda Air. They're going to chair our discussions, and thank you all for your leadership.